The least satisfied people in America are often the ones doing everything right. And if you look at the data, people in their mid-50s report the lowest levels of satisfaction, while people in their early 70s report the highest. That's surprising because your mid-50s are usually when you've built the most wealth and done everything that you were supposed to do. Why does it feel more uncertain right before retirement than after? When you look closer, it comes down to a handful of patterns that show up right around this stage. And I've seen firsthand working with clients, and there are 7 things that come up again and again, and that's the topic of today's video. But first, I'm Justin Haywood, a certified financial planner, and I've helped hundreds of people retire with confidence, and I want to help you do the same. So let's get started. Number 1 is that there's no perfect number for retirement. I've talked to people with anywhere from $1 million to $5 million, and they don't feel like they're ready to retire. No matter where they are, the goalposts just keep moving. Even if you saved $1.7 million, which is objectively strong by most measures, you probably still don't feel ahead. That's not by accident. The financial industry has trained people to think retirement is about hitting some specific number. At one point, it was $1 million. Then it was $2 million. Now you'll hear that you need $3 or more million to retire. But what I've found is that the number matters a lot less than how your money is structured. $2 million in a portfolio where you have to sell investments every month to create income, especially during downturns, feels really stressful. That same $2 million that's structured in a way where you're not relying on selling assets at the wrong time feels completely different. You have the same balance, but it's a completely different experience. And I'll come back to that later, but the key point is that there's no perfect number, but there is a right way to structure what you have. Number 2 is you want to stop letting your job destroy your health. And this is one that I've seen up close with my clients. I've had people come to me a year or 2 into retirement and say things like, I didn't realize how bad I felt until after I stopped working. I have one client that told me he finally had time to go to the doctor after he retired. He had kept putting it off, and he ended up addressing issues that he had been putting off for years. Another one said that his sleep improved almost immediately once all of his work stress was gone. His blood pressure came down, he started to normalize his weight, and these were things that hadn't responded to anything while he was still working. Now, I've also seen the other side of it. I've met people who pushed through just one more year, and that turned into a health event that forced their retirement instead of it being a choice. In a couple cases, that one more year comes with a surgery, extended recovery, and tens of thousands of dollars in out-of-pocket costs, even with good insurance. The part that doesn't get talked about enough is that on paper, an extra year of income, say $150,000, it feels meaningful, and it is, but it's not as one-sided as it looks, because when stress has been building for years and years, sometimes that extra year isn't just another paycheck. It's added strain at a point where your body's already telling you something. And financially, one unexpected event can easily offset a large portion of that extra income. But more importantly, it can take away time from the years you were actually trying to protect. Your health is an asset, and in a lot of cases, it's the most valuable asset that you have. You can always adjust your financial plan, you can cut spending, change your withdrawals, reposition your investments, but once your health starts moving in the wrong direction, it's much harder to reverse. And that's why the decision around one more year shouldn't just be financial. Number 3 is to protect your time. At 55, your time is more valuable than ever. I don't mean that in some generic way. It's in a very real sense, very practical sense, the most important asset that you have. The margin for how you spend your time starts to narrow the older you get, and each year carries more weight than it did 20 years ago. This is something that comes up in conversations more often than people expect. I've had clients that hesitate to retire, and when we really talk it through, it's not always about the money. Sometimes it's because work provides structure and it's predictable, and what's waiting at home or outside of work feels a lot less clear. In a few cases, I've had clients admit that their job was actually shielding them from some difficult relationships, and it just provided a distraction that was easy to keep going with. And it doesn't have to be with a spouse, it could be with friends, family members, even social circles. I remember one client in particular who, when they retired, within a year of retirement, they started making changes that they had avoided for decades. He spent less time around certain people, he started to set boundaries with family, and he became much more selective about how he used his time. And he told me, I didn't realize how much energy I was giving away until I finally had control of my schedule. And I've heard versions of that more than once. Sometimes the hardest realization isn't financial. It's recognizing that someone you've known for years might not be adding to your life anymore. You don't owe time to people who consistently make you feel worse. That's true at any age, of course, but after 55, it becomes a lot more urgent because Time isn't something that you can replace. Number 4 is stop letting other people's opinions shape your retirement decisions. I see this all the time. Someone's financially ready to make a change, maybe step back from work, simplify their lifestyle, or spend differently, but they hesitate, not because it doesn't make sense, but because of how it might look. What I've learned through working with people in this stage of life is that most of that pressure isn't real, it's imaginary. Everyone assumes their decisions are being watched and judged by the people around them, but really, most people are too focused on their own situation to give it any thought at all. I've had clients worry about downsizing their home because of what friends might think, only to realize later that no one really cared. I've seen people delay retirement because they felt they were too young to retire, even though staying another year wasn't improving anything meaningfully. I've also seen the opposite. Someone quietly step away from a high pressure role into something simpler, and within months their stress drops, their health improves, and they finally feel like themselves again. What's interesting is that the people with the strongest opinions are rarely the ones living the kind of life you'd want to trade places with anyway. And at some point, the shift has to happen from asking, how does this look, to does this actually work for me? Because the people who are most comfortable in retirement aren't the ones who followed the expected path. They're the ones who made the decisions based on their own priorities and are willing to ignore the noise. Number 5 is to stop giving your energy to things that you have no influence over. Things like market downturns, inflation, what's going on in politics. None of that is within your control. But what is within your control is how you spend, how your income is structured, your daily habits, your health, and the people that you choose to be around. There's a line that I've always liked, which is that most things we worry about are completely imaginary. But there's a financial angle to this that doesn't get talked about enough. If your retirement plan relies on selling investments at the right time, you've built anxiety directly into your retirement system. Every market drop isn't just noise, it feels personal because it impacts your income. Now, compare that to what someone whose income is more deliberately structured looks like. Instead of relying entirely on market timing, they've built in sources of steady cash flow, things like bonds or other income producing assets that pay consistently regardless of what the market's doing. And when income shows up predictably, same time, same amount every month, your experience of retirement changes. Not because you suddenly have more money, but because you're no longer reacting to every market move. And that shift from market-dependent withdrawals to more reliable income is one of the biggest upgrades I see people make as they move through their 50s and 60s. Number 6 is treating your retirement savings like they're untouchable. This is something almost nobody warns you about. You've spent 30 or 40 years accumulating, saving, spending less, watching your accounts grow. And that mindset is what got you here. And it required discipline and it worked. But in retirement, that same mindset can quietly become a problem. And I see this all the time. People who've done everything right, they build a solid nest egg, then they struggle to actually use it. Not because they don't have enough, but because mentally they're still in saving mode. There's a concept in planning, which is that there are phases of retirement. Your 60s or early retirement is what we call your go-go years. You're healthy, active, you're able to travel and pursue all of your hobbies and enjoy your time. Then in your 70s, things slow down and we call these your slow-go years. And then later on, as you move into your 80s, you get into your no-go years where you're not really doing a whole lot in retirement. The issue is when someone holds back too much early on. They preserve their portfolio, they underspend, and end up with more money later in life than they can realistically use or enjoy. And I hear all the time from clients that I wish I had done more when I had the energy to do it. That's really the trade-off. If you delay too much of your spending, you may end up protecting money for a version of your life where you don't even need it. Obviously, there's a balance here. The goal isn't to spend recklessly, but you also don't want to carry that same saver's mindset so far into retirement that you miss the years when your time, health, and freedom all line up. Finally, number 7, stop putting off things that actually matter. I've had conversations with people who did everything right financially and still ran out of time to do what they actually wanted to do. One client of mine retired later than he had originally intended because he wanted a little more cushion, but within a couple of years, his health had changed enough that the things he had planned, like travel, being active, all of his hobbies, they weren't as realistic anymore. I've seen this time and time again where you delay stepping back from work only to realize that that extra year or two didn't meaningfully improve their financial situation, but it did cost them time that they'll never get back. The pattern is pretty consistent. When people look back, the regret is rarely, I should have worked longer. It's almost always, I wish I had done this sooner. That doesn't mean ignore the numbers or be careless. It means be honest about the trade-off you're making. Because at some point, you're no longer optimizing for more. You're deciding how much time you're willing to give up to get it. And most people don't regret the money they didn't earn, they regret the life they delayed. And that's really the shift. The people who move from that mid-50s stress into the confidence you see in their 70s, they stop waiting for perfect and they start making decisions with the time that they actually have left. If you found this video helpful, please consider liking it and subscribe to our channel so that you can see more content like this in the future. And if you're looking for a fiduciary financial advisor to help look at your situation and make sure that you have everything structured correctly, we'd love to talk with you at Haywood Wealth Management. There's a link in the description where you can schedule a call with me to talk about your situation and see what we might be able to do to help. And if you're looking for another video to watch, I've recorded another one right here that you might enjoy.